Thank you for visiting Past the Wire TV, the YouTube channel of PastTheWire.com. Welcome everybody to another episode of Past the Wire TV, and there's really no other way to say it. We're fortunate enough today to be joined on the show by legit racing royalty. Joseph O Brien will be with us today, and we'll talk everything from his recent Cox Plate win to being only the second person in the history of the Breeders' Cup to win a race as a trainer and a rider, along with a long list of other accomplishments for a young man that's, in the wake of his dad, Aidan O Brien, and just a tremendous racing family, has quickly established himself as a force to be reckoned with in the sport of kings, in his own right. So we're going to welcome Joseph to the show. I think you will enjoy it. I think we'll have some fun, and we'll be back in a minute with Joseph O Brien.
Coming down to the finish, and it will be Matole.
The level of racing that he's achieved is extremely rare. The quality fields that he's beat. That's what makes him the fastest horse in the world.
The final time was a new stakes record. Matole, he did it again! Matole's a monster! Matole wins the sprint! Oh, what a horse he is! The mighty Matole!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Past the Wire TV, where we are joined today by what I have to say, and I hope Joseph takes this the right way, as racing royalty. Joseph O Brien, an accomplished trainer, rider, comes from a well-known racing family. Joseph, thank you so much for coming on Past the Wire TV. It's a pleasure to talk to you today.
Yeah, pleasure to be here, Tom. Thank you for having me.
It's funny, go back a couple of years, and I'll remind you of something. We sat at a couple of tables away from each other at the Breeders' Cup a couple of years ago, and you were kind enough on a busy day. I think you had a horse or two in on Friday, but you definitely had one in on Saturday, and we talked about you becoming very soon the second jockey in history to win a Breeders' Cup race as a trainer and as a rider. And I remember you had told me that you were really not thinking about that. You were just trying to win the race, and if that would happen, that would happen. And I said, oh no, it's probably going to happen soon, but it's definitely going to happen eventually. And it did with Iridessa the next day. So that was a fun moment for me, and I'm sure it was a special moment for you.
Yeah, very, very special day, Jonathan. It's always a pleasure just to be able to attend the Breeders' Cup and to take part. And really, that's what we were there to run as good as we can and to enjoy the experience. And it was a very special day for the filly to win.
I mean, do you ever think about, the historical significance of that? I mean, Freddie had rode Me-esque and won. And then he trained Golda Cover and won a bunch of Breeders' Cups with Golda Cover. But I think I got to give you the edge, because as good a filly as Iridessa won, I'm about 200 pounds, and I think I could have won with Golda Cover.
Yeah, no, it was we don't think about things like that really. We just place our horses in the best races that we can, and give them the best shot to win the races that they're in. And we're lucky enough to have the support of some great owners, and that means we have some nice horses, and we're able to compete on big races around the world each year.
It's amazing the career that you've built up and the resume that you've built up, both training and riding in a relatively short time. I believe your first win was back in 2009, and a couple of years later, in 2012, you won the Irish Derby on Camelot for your dad, Aidan. The first time ever a father and son won the Irish Derby. So what I would like to know is, growing up in that kind of family, most people would think, well, Joseph's got an advantage growing up in that kind of family, and we can see that aspect of it for sure. But it's also got to be, I would think, a tremendous amount of pressure to perform up to the level that's almost expected of you, and you've been able to do that. Can you talk a little bit about that pressure and what that was like?
Yeah, well, I suppose, I'm very lucky, Jonathan, that I was born into a very privileged position when it comes to horse racing. Obviously, mum and dad are steeped in horse racing, and I grew up in an environment where there was high class horses around us every day, and I never really saw much else. And like you say, that there is pressures that come with that, you have to perform, and you have to perform at a high level, and on the world stage. But I suppose I'm also in the position that I was lucky enough to be able to ride some of the top horses, and really all you can do is do your best. You're always going to have people who say that you're there because of your family association or whatever, and they're probably right, but you still have to perform, and you still have to perform on the big days. And I'm very lucky that I was in that position for a number of years, and it was an amazing experience, and I had the support of some incredible people.
Well, I don't think, in all honesty, I don't think it's fair for anybody to really say that about you at this point in your career. I think you've won enough races on the world stage all over the country, group one races as a trainer and a rider all over the world, that I think it's kind of buried the question, or negated the question that you're there because of the position that you were born in. I think that's I think it's taking you a very short time to prove anybody who says that just wrong. I think your resume at this point speaks for itself. I mean, as a rider, the Irish 2000 Guineas, Irish Derby, Irish Saint Leger, even France, the Grand Prix de Paris, just so
Yeah.
many races. The Breeders' Cup on St. Nicholas Abbey. Well, what was that like? That had to be a really, really special moment. If I remember correctly, your dad had another horse in the race that I think was more highly regarded, and St. Nicholas Abbey was the lesser thought of the two, I think, and won. Am I correct? Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, Dad had a couple of runners in the race. But St. Nicholas Abbey was a very talented horse on his day. He had missed a lot of his 3-year-old campaign, and he came back and was really, really good on his day. All through his career, he was a little bit hit and miss sometimes, but when he was on song, he was really good. And that day he was, I mean, he was incredible. He showed a fantastic turn of foot in the straight, and he was a top racehorse, and I was very lucky to be able to be associated with him for a number of years, and we had some fantastic days together.
Now you kind of got to be a big jockey. You were tall and kind of got big. If you stayed smaller, would you have kept riding? Was it size that really propelled you to training, or would you have become a trainer anyway?
Well, to be honest, training was always, what I wanted to do, even growing up and riding. And I didn't expect my riding career to go on for as long as it did, because I obviously was tall from day one. And I managed, I rode a lot more winners and bigger winners than, what I could ever have dreamed of. And training was always the end game. So I think, if I had been smaller and lighter, I probably would be still riding, but training was always the end game and always what I had in mind to do.
Now, in what ways did your experience as a rider in some of those big races help you today? Like, what did you bring with you from that experience that makes you a better trainer today?
Well, I suppose I was able to ride at a lot of the big tracks all over the world, and to know what a horse needs to go and compete at a certain race course and around different jurisdictions around the world. So I think knowing the tracks was a big advantage, as well as the contacts and the people that I met along the way. I was very lucky to meet some fantastic people that I'm still friends with to this day, and I can still call on for advice or help when it's needed. So I think a combination of things, and just the experience of riding in big races is something that I'll never forget, and something that I fall back on all the time.
You know, it's got to be challenging. I mean, you're in a position where you run a barn that really competes all over the world. I mean, you won, the Cox Plate, which is a very difficult race to win. You've won the Melbourne Cup twice, which I think is one of, I would say, my opinion, and correct me if I'm wrong, the Melbourne Cup, the Arc, and maybe the Breeders' Cup Classic are probably three of the toughest races I would say to win in the world. And you've managed to win you know, the Melbourne Cup twice, and State of Rest did something that I can't remember any horse doing, winning a grade 1 at Saratoga, then going to Australia and winning the Cox, you know, the Cox Plate. That's just a resume that you won't see duplicated by many racehorses. What is it? How do you go about, what are the things you look for in horses to know that, yeah, you know, this horse can compete in Australia, where maybe this horse would be better suited to compete in Ireland, and this horse might be better suited to compete or point for a Breeders' Cup or a race in the States or something like that? What are the quirks or idiosyncrasies or nuances, if you would, of a racehorse that you look for to go to different parts of the world?
Yeah, I think, you know, it's more so putting the horse in the right race. And you know, we're very lucky. We have top horses. We have some really good owners, and when we have a horse that can compete at a high level, we're always keen to put him in whatever we think is the best spot for him. You know, where he can win a big check, or where he can compete at group grade 1 level. So whether that race is in Australia, America, or whether it's at home here in Ireland or in the UK, we try to put our horse in the most suitable race and where he has the best chance of winning a big race or a Group 1. And we're always happy to think outside the box and to look at international options. And we're very happy to travel if that's where we think the best spot for the horse is. So really, it's more so, instead of trying to find horses for the races, it's really finding the right race for the horse is how we go about it.
So it's the actual opposite way of I'm looking at it. You're looking for the right race, where I would have thought you know, you're looking for the right horse. So you let the horses kind of take you to the right races, so to speak.
Exactly. And you know, when you have some of those top horses, you're lucky enough to be in a position to look at all those international festivals and target some of them. So that's really how we do it. We take it race by race, and you know, put the horses in the best spots that we think we can win.
Do you think it was tougher on you to perform as a rider or as a trainer at your level?
You know, there's no doubt that there's more pressure on training horses. There's an awful lot more work that goes into it behind the scenes. And I certainly feel, you know, a lot more pressure and more nervous when I'm watching a race compared to when I was riding. I think it's because it's obviously out of your control. But then, you know, when you have a big winner, I think the kick is even greater, that you get the satisfaction. Yeah, I think it works both ways, but for me, that there's certainly more pressure, and I find that I feel it a little bit more as a trainer than what I did as a rider.
Interesting. Now, would you agree that there is a significant difference between what we would call a bad ride from a jockey and a bad trip, where it just nothing the rider did wrong, just didn't work out? You would agree there's a difference, correct?
Well, yeah, I suppose there is, and you know, having been in that position a number of times, I understand that a rider cannot always switch to plan B or C or D, and I don't. I tend to, you know, speak to my riders about the horses, and they have a rough idea of how I like them ridden. But generally, the guys that ride for me on a kind of a weekly basis, I don't give a lot of instructions, and I'm more than happy for them to kind of jump and see how the race sets up. So I tend to keep a pretty open book when it comes to writing instructions, and I'm, you know, generally happy for the riders to make adjustments as they feel fit as the race is happening.
Now, because you rode and because you've been in that situation and know what can happen in a race, are you a little easier on your riders when things go wrong, or do you sometimes really get on them and give them a good talking to after a race doesn't go right?
No, I think I'd say I'm probably I like to think that I'm an easy enough trainer to ride for, but I guess you'll have to ask the jockeys that question.
Yeah,
But like I say, I don't tie the riders down to big instructions. I always like them to break as well as they can, and if they can take a forward spot to do that, and otherwise, then I'm happy for them to go to plan B. So generally speaking, we leave our riders with a pretty open book, and I understand that things happen in races that you have to adjust to.
Was when was it growing up, as Aiden's son, was Aiden hard on you when he was teaching you and bringing you along, and you were working around the barn and the yard? Was he tough on you, or was he
No,
easy?
we were all brought up, Donica and Sarah and Anna, my two sisters, and Donica, my brother, we were all brought up in the racing environment, and we didn't see anything else. And we were all very passionate about horses and horse racing from a very young age. So we were always keen to be involved in the yard and to learn as much as we could. And, very lucky that mum and dad brought us to everywhere, brought us to the Breeders' Cups, brought us to race meetings, all the time from the time we could walk.
Interesting. When you train for people that are very involved in the breeding aspect as well. What are some of the sires that you are partial to, that you are high on, and what are the characteristics of their offspring that attract you to those particular sires?
Yeah, well, I suppose I train, a wide range of horses for a wide range of people, and I'm very lucky to have the support of some top breeders, as well as people who are happy to buy yearlings, and we've been very lucky with I suppose two younger sires that I know very well, that we have trained a number of their offspring over the last 2 years, are, like you mentioned earlier, Camelot and Australia. And I've been quite lucky with those on the track, as well as when I was riding previously, I had a good relationship with both horses. So they're two younger sires that we're pretty keen on at the moment. But we're very lucky to have, like I say, have the support of a number of breeders, and we get a wide variety of different stallions and sires stock into the yard, and we'll always do the best we can with what we have.
Now, with the experience you have at different circuits all over the world, and the tougher circuits all over the world, how would you compare and can contrast them? Which would you say are the tougher circuits? And I know they're all tough to some extent, but doesn't it have to be that some are a little tougher or a little more competitive than others, or once you get to that level, it's just all out wherever you are?
Yeah, it's so hard to win a Group 1 of any level anywhere in the world, and you can say that you think the racing is a bit easier in one jurisdiction or a bit tougher in another one, but at the end of the day, you try and win a Group 1, and no matter where you go in the world, it's very tough to do that. So you just need a top horse, and you need a horse that has had a good preparation, and you think is in a race that the conditions suit him. It's really tough to win Group 1s anywhere in the world.
Now, probably the major difference in training in the United States and in Ireland, where you are, and even in the UK, you mostly train on your own yard, which is away from the racetracks. Is there an advantage to that, do you think? Is that a better system than the way that we do it here, where most of the horses are kept at the track where they're racing and actually train? Or is that an advantage? Which way would you say is more advantageous and better for the horses?
Yeah, well, I suppose for me anyway, I train, every single one of my horses is on our own farm here in Owning Hill, completely private facility. We have our own gallops, our own facilities, spas, and you name it. We have all the facilities here, and it's all completely private. It's all run by ourselves, and I'm the only trainer that ever has any horses here. So I think it's a huge advantage, really. I can train the horses in the morning. We can take our time with them. If each set can be out for an hour or more, and they can go out and graze in the paddocks in the afternoons. They can go to the spa. They can. So it's a much more natural setting, I think. I'm very lucky to have a top class facility that that would stick up with any facility in the world, and a great team of people, and a great team of staff and riders, that allow us to have a number of horses and perform well, all over Ireland and the UK, and the world, wherever we're going to race.
It's got to be difficult to keep track of so many horses and so many races when you're looking all over the world like you do. Is that something that you do computerized? I see you've got a board there next to you. I guess those are horses' names on there. Can you tell us a little bit about how you manage that, and what's on that board? Are those horses' names that is scheduled to work, gallop, or those races?
Yeah, well, so I tend to we run everything through the office here, and I have, like, you can see some of the whiteboards there, and with horses' names on them, and work programs, and but I have a kind of a good routine, and because all of my horses are here on the same facility, I see every horse every day, so I can see with a horse, he needs a little bit more work, he needs a little bit less, and I can adjust their training accordingly. So that's a huge advantage that we have compared to, say, in America, where trainers have horses all over the states at any one time, and they're flying around trying to manage all the animals. So that makes a trainer's life, and say in Europe or in the UK, much easier, insofar as they can get to see every horse every day, and can tailor the training programs accordingly.
I think I agree that that's an advantage. One of the issues that I've always had with some of the larger stables in the United States is, you can hire a trainer in the United States that got horses at 3 or 4 different racetracks, and nothing against the assistants, because a lot of them are very talented, horsemen, and very good, and many of them go on to become excellent trainers themselves. But if I hire Joseph O Brien, and I'm fortunate enough for you to say, yeah, I'll train for you, I'll take some of your horses, and it turns out that they're at a track that you're not at, and I'm really, hiring that assistant. That assistant's training them because you're not seeing them every day.
Yeah, well, I suppose it's just a different system, and I guess that's the way it's been for a lot of years, and the big trainers in America do an incredible job with all their horses. They obviously have fantastic organization, and fantastic assistants, and a fantastic team of people behind them, and I'm not saying that one system is better than the other, but they're just two different ways of training, and different ways of taking horses to the track, and there's some incredible trainers in America with huge numbers of horses that do a fantastic job. But I'm lucky to have a great facility here, and I wouldn't change it for the world. But yeah, like you said, they are just different systems, and different ways of training horses.
I thought that you were going to have a couple in the Breeders' Cup this year. It didn't turn out that way. Is that a disappointment, or is it just you move on? There are so many other big races, and you've got so many other horses, that it's just just didn't work out. So just start looking at the next opportunities, or
Yeah,
is
no,
the
it
Breeders'
is.
Cup kind
It
of
is what it is, Jonathan. It is what it is. We'd love to have some horses to take out, but it didn't set up that way this year. We had a couple of horses that got sold, and we had a filly that was retired, and that's just the way it's set up. But there's no point in just taking horses that we think haven't got a chance to win. So we're always keen to travel, but travel with a horse that we think is legitimate. And this year it didn't set up to have any runners there, but yeah, that's the way it goes, and it'll be a fantastic race meeting, and I'm really looking forward to the weekend anyway.
I always think that your outfit and your dad's outfit are probably the best in the world at shipping horses. You can just travel all over the world, and your horses arrive fit and happy and healthy. And when they go out on a racetrack in sets, they just outlook the competition often. I noticed that when I was at the Breeders' Cup that we spoke about at Santa Anita, that when your dad's horses and your horses went out to the track, they just outlook a lot of the competition. They just look like just really top shelf equine athletes. Is there anything in your shipping program or the manner that you ship horses that helps that? If you know what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
yeah. Well, I think the most important thing probably is that you ship the right horse and ship a horse that has a constitution that will allow him to take the journey in his stride and to keep eating and drinking. And once you have a horse who has a good level of fitness and has the mentality to take the shipping well, then they're pretty straightforward. And horses are very relaxed. They've no problem flying, and the vast majority of horses take to it pretty well. And once you have the right horse, then it's you can then pick wherever you want to go.
Are there occasionally horses that are just high strung or just don't ship well, so you kind of look for more local races for them?
Yeah, exactly. There's some horses that don't travel as well, and they don't eat or drink as well as what you'd like them to do when they're in a change of environment. So yeah, you would generally see if you could find a more local or a race in Ireland or races at home for that type of a horse. So I think it's just it's about taking the right horses, Jonathan. That and once you have a horse that has a good constitution and is happy to travel, then you can go wherever you want.
Other than the Arc de Triomphe, I can't really think off the top of my head of you've won so many major grass races. Um, Looking ahead, the Kentucky Derby and the Breeders' Cup Classic, both dirt races. Um, are they somewhere in the back of Joseph's mind as, hey, those are two races I want to win someday, especially the Kentucky Derby. They say it's everybody's dream to win.
Yeah, of
Um,
course. Yeah, of course, John. And you'd love to, be able to compete in those races. But I mean, like I say, we just put the horses in the right spots, and really for me to have a horse who could end up in the Kentucky Derby is probably difficult. I'd have to get some more kind of American bred horses, and I'd need to be lucky to land on a horse that could end up in a race like that. But it obviously would be fantastic. But we just, like I say, take it horse by horse and put them in the spots that we think are suitable. And yeah, it would be fantastic to have a runner in those races sometime in the future, but it's not something that I want to plan to do. But we'll just keep putting our horses in the right spots and take it from there.
Last question, and then I'll let you go because I know you're busy and you've been great with your time. When you look at a horse, okay, breeding aside, but when you look at the conformation and makeup of a horse, and a lot of times I'll hear people say, "Oh, that horse has a turf hoof or a turf foot, or he doesn't have a turf hoof or a turf foot." What is it that you look at in a horse physically that signals, yeah, he looks like a turf horse or he doesn't look like a turf horse? Like as a non-horseman, as someone who's just a student of the game and a fan of the game and someone who enjoys betting on the horses, if you were to explain to me and we were in a paddock and looking at a horse, say, okay, that horse looks like a turf horse because of blank. Fill in that blank for me, if you would.
Yeah, well, I suppose that really the proof of it is when they get to the track and how they perform, and I guess to run on dirt, and I'm not as experienced with dirt runners as I should be, but you got to have some speed, and you need a horse that can jump and run fast. And generally speaking, the dirt horses tend to be a little bit more muscle than the turf horses, but it's not. I don't think there's any rules really, and with horses there's always an exception to every rule. So I don't think it's possible to look at a horse and say X, Y, Z, this is what he's going to be. I think you have to get the horse and get to know the horse, and as he trains, you'll get to know what suits him and what doesn't suit him, and then you can take it from there. But yeah, it's a difficult question to answer because I don't think there's any hard and fast rules.
Joseph, like I said at the beginning, I mean, you've established an unbelievable resume in a relatively short amount of time, both in the saddle and out of the saddle as a trainer. I think you've built up a resume that's comparable to the top level people in the game. You've won enough races as a rider to be considered an esteemed rider, and your training career is certainly at that level, and it's still going on today. Thank you so much for coming on the show. It was a pleasure talking to you, getting to know you a little bit better. I hope you take the trip to California to the Breeders' Cup to root on your dad's horses. Looks like it's going to be a fun weekend. He's got some live horses in there. And just again, thank you so much for your time. It was really a pleasure.
Pleasure was mine, Jonathan. Thanks very much for having me.
Okay. I'll see you again soon sometime.
Keep well.
All righty. Ciao. Thank
All
you,
right.
everybody, for watching another episode of Past the Wire TV. Check out pastthewire.com for the best in the sport of kings, and ciao for now. Nobody does it